The eyes of spring, you wouldn't hear how the flowers whispered when they saw her, but they did whisper to her. The wind carried her name. The sun followed the traces of her footsteps. She was Persephone, daughter of Demeter, the breath of spring, the voice of blossoms, the hope of the earth. But no spring lasts forever. That morning she was walking through the meadows as she always did. Her fingertips brushed the petals of violets and white daffodils, the birds singing around her. The world itself seemed to breathe with her, and then the earth split open. The cold breath of the underworld struck her face, silencing the songs of flowers. Silence is sometimes stronger than fear. And in that silence, her eyes met a pair of eyes glowing in the darkness. Hades, king of the underworld, lord of death and darkness. As he approached silently, the air around him froze. The flowers turned gray, the birds fell silent. Even the sun hid behind the clouds. Persephone tried to step back, but her feet felt as if tangled in invisible roots. When Hades reached out his hand, the earth itself began to pull her down. She tried to scream, but the wind took her voice, and it never reached her mother. As the world lost its spring, the underworld gained its new queen. When she descended beneath the earth, the light danced in her hair one last time, before darkness swallowed everything, and above, Demeter felt it. A hollow opened in her heart. The earth turned cold, the winds fell silent. Spring ended. The gates of darkness before the darkness swallowed Persephone. It touched her. As she descended, passing between stone walls, the cold air filled her lungs. The warmth of the sun she left behind, the scent of her mother, the softness of the breeze. All of it was fading, becoming nothing more than a distant memory. Hades walked silently beside her. His eyes burned like flames even in the dark. These eyes had seen the shadows of thousands of the dead, heard the cries of countless souls. But now, those eyes were fixed upon Persephone. Ahead, a massive gate appeared, built of black stone, covered in ancient runes. It stood silent and waiting. As they stopped before it, the ground trembled softly. The gates opened on their own, and a dark wind rushed outward. Persephone stepped back, her eyes caught between fear and curiosity. Hades looked at her, extending his hand. His voice echoed as if it rose from the depths of the underworld. "There is nothing to fear here, Persephone. This is your home now." Despite the fear in her chest, Persephone took his hand. As she stepped forward, the darkness embraced her. The underworld was silent. Only the whispers of souls moved through the air like a distant sigh. The dark river Styx hummed somewhere far away, a low melody under the silence. Everything was gray, misty, cold. But as they approached Hades' palace, Persephone felt something different. Pale flowers pushed through the cracks in the stones, lifting their heads as if searching for light. The breaths that echoed in the silence seemed to whisper her name. And in that moment, Persephone realized something was missing here. Life itself. The underworld was a world untouched by the living. Yet she was alive here. She still carried the scent of spring on her skin, the last sparkles of sunlight hidden in her hair. When Hades sat upon his throne, he looked at her. In his eyes, there was weariness, the loneliness of 1,000 years. But beneath that, there was a flicker of hope. For the first time, Hades was not alone. And despite her fear, Persephone felt a strength rising within her. Perhaps in this darkness, a new spring would begin to bloom. A mother's cry each day Persephone spent in the underworld was a season dying above. Demeter searched for her daughter across the fields. She looked where the flowers had wilted, listening for her name in the smallest whispers carried by the wind. But the wind was silent, the earth mute, and the sun no longer shone as it once did. At night, Demeter's tears fell as rain upon the earth. During the day, the winds born from her fury scorched the fields. People watched in fear as their crops withered. Their trees bore no fruit, their lands turned barren. For Demeter was the earth's fertility, but now her heart was shattered. The prayers of mothers at night went unheard. The cries of hungry children tore through the darkness, while Demeter sat upon a lonely hill, whispering her daughter's name, Persephone. But no answer came. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Persephone could not feel the passage of time. There was no day, no night, only a gray light and an unending silence. The river Styx hummed in the distance, the whispers of the dead echoing through the stone halls of the palace. Hades showed her chambers, opened gardens for her, gathered the most beautiful flowers of the underworld in her name. But the flowers were pale, scentless, colorless. When Persephone took one into her hand, it crumbled into fine gray dust. One night, Persephone looked out into the darkness from the palace window. A single tear fell from her eye. In that moment, something happened in the underworld. As her tear touched the earth, a small bud appeared, fragile and pale, but alive. Hades saw this. He came silently to stand beside her. When he placed his hand upon her shoulder, the echo in his voice was gone. "You have brought life here." Persephone did not answer. Her eyes remained on that pale sprout beside her. The longing for her mother burned like a flame. She missed her mother, the sun, the winds. But most of all, she missed the scent of life above the earth. The underworld was slowly trying to claim her, to make her its own. But Persephone was still the daughter of spring. And above that night, Demeter looked to the sky, searching for a sign in the light of the moon. Tears streaming down her face, she cried out to the heavens, "Give me back my daughter." That cry shook the winds, scattered the clouds, and even the gods could no longer ignore it. The world was waiting for a mother to be reunited with her daughter. The bargain Demeter's cry reached all the way to Olympus. The gods were beginning to grow uneasy with the darkness and cold spreading across the earth. People had stopped praying. Temples stood empty. No sacrifices were offered. When the earth goes hungry, people go hungry. When people go hungry, their faith in the gods begins to crumble. Zeus, ruler of the skies, lord of thunder, looked down upon the world from between the clouds. The fields were gray, rivers had dried up, the trees stood bare. The fear of humans rose to the heavens. And Zeus knew that this silence would weaken even the gods themselves. When Demeter stood before Zeus, there was neither fear nor reverence in her eyes, only the fury and longing of a mother. "I want my daughter back." Zeus could not decide without speaking to his brother Hades. He sent Hermes, the winged god of light and messenger of the gods. Hermes crossed the river Styx and descended into the underworld. When he arrived at Hades' palace, he saw Persephone. There was sorrow and defiance in her gaze. Even in the darkness, her hair shone, and her presence carried the scent of life into the underworld. Hades listened to Hermes in silence.
Why?
When his eyes turned to Persephone, he chose his words carefully. "Do you wish to leave?" Persephone could not answer. Her eyes filled with tears. She missed her mother, the sun, the winds, yet deep inside. A part of her understood the silence of the underworld, the hum of the Styx, and the loneliness in Hades' gaze. She felt that she had left a mark here. Hades saw the conflict within her. He offered her a pomegranate. The pomegranate, red as blood, was the fruit of the underworld. Persephone took it in her hand, unaware of the weight of the moment, looking at the red seeds within, and she ate one. At that moment, the underworld seemed to take a breath. Thin rays of light streamed through the cracks in the gray walls. The hum of the Styx changed. The whispers of the dead fell silent. Hermes lowered his head. It was a sign. For those who tasted the fruit of the underworld would belong to it. But Zeus and Demeter could not allow a mother's heart to be forever broken. A bargain was struck on Olympus. Persephone would spend part of the year above the earth with her mother, bringing back spring and summer. But because she had eaten the fruit of the underworld, she would spend the rest of the year below, by Hades' side. The world held its breath. The bargain was made. Spring could return once more, but nothing would ever be the same again. Persephone was now the queen of both worlds. The return of spring. The silence of the underworld was broken. As Persephone left Hades' palace, she walked past the banks of the Styx. The whispers of the souls fell silent, and the sound of her footsteps echoed in the stillness. Hades watched her from behind, his eyes holding emptiness and quiet acceptance. For now, he knew, Persephone would leave, but she would also return. Hermes guided Persephone upward, toward the light. As they passed through the layers of earth, the darkness began to thin. A slender beam of light touched her hair, and Persephone took a deep breath. With that breath, the earth cracked open, ice melted, and buds appeared on the branches of trees. For the first time in a long while, the sun's warmth was felt once more. The wind carried the scent of spring, and Demeter felt the footsteps of her daughter as her bare feet touched the earth. Tears streamed down her face, but this time those tears made flowers bloom in the soil. When Persephone emerged into the light, her eyes met her mother's. In that moment, time stood still. The boundary between the two worlds dissolved in the gaze of mother and daughter. Demeter ran to Persephone, embracing her, breathing in her scent, holding her hands. "Welcome home, my daughter." Tears fell from Persephone's eyes, but these tears were different from those in the underworld. These were tears of life, of hope. The world took a breath. Flowers bloomed, rivers flowed once more, birds returned to their songs. People went back to their fields, children began to run and play. Spring had returned, but Persephone knew. This cycle was endless. One day, she would leave again. She would return to the underworld, to sit by Hades' silent throne, because she had eaten the pomegranate, because the underworld was now her home too. But this did not frighten her. She was now the queen of both realms. She knew she could walk in both darkness and in light. That day spring walked upon the earth with Persephone's steps, and the wind carried her name, Persephone.